With so many TCGs being kind of overtaken by speculators lately, it got me thinking about whether or not the booster pack is actually the correct model for people that just want to play the game that they love. Way back in the day, there was a time when you could buy a booster box and expect to get more value out of the cards than what the box cost you. But those days are long gone, right? Now, if you're going to be getting the amount of money back that you spent on the box, it's basically a gamble. This has led to a lot of speculators buying the box itself and not opening the packs. The question arises for me as to whether or not the booster pack was ever a good deal for the player. It enables formats like draft to exist, but you don't need booster packs to do that. You can create a set of cards that all comes in the same box, and then you shuffle them up just like you do with a cube. I think it's time we discuss the pros and cons of the booster pack and if they ever really made sense for the player. There's a different model called Expandable Card Games, where basically you can buy exactly what you would want. There's no randomization. It's a fixed distribution model instead of a random one, where if you buy a pack of cards, it just lists all of the cards that are going to be in the box that you're purchasing, similar to like precons, right? Except it's the whole game works that way. But I'm not someone with firsthand experience in the expandable card game scene, so I felt like I needed to call in an expert. So I called up my friend Cory DeVore. Cory DeVore is a sculptor and a game designer. He worked at Fantasy Flight Games during their big expandable card game boom. They called them living card games, but same thing. And also now he works at Earthborn Games, where he's designing his own expandable card game called Hubworld Aidalon that is now currently in late pledges. If you're interested after this conversation in checking that game out for yourself, there'll be a link in the description. So yeah, let's get into my conversation with Cory DeVore about expandable card games and how they solve some of TCG's biggest gameplay problems.
Distraction makers.
It kind of seems like the whole goal was to connect to worlds that were pretty disconnected, right? Which was TCGs and board games. And they're like, well, how do we arrive at an in-between where TCG players might want to play it and board game players might want to play it, and we can kind of find a balance between the two?
Yeah, and I think you can see that not only in like the release model of LCGs being like these contained boxes, but also in the mechanics. Like the LCGs tend to have a lot more, putting tokens on things or like going to locations and having like feuds, so icon struggles. The designers working on the FFG LCGs tended, I think, to be trying their hardest to not make Magic the Gathering.
Sure.
Especially as a board game company, they have more access to componentry, which Magic the Gathering likes to pretend like it doesn't have tokens, but it has a massive amount of tokens.
Yeah, especially at this point. Yeah, I think there was a point in time where like Magic's core philosophy was we want the entire game to fit, in a deck box, right? Getting to the question at hand, why would you choose one or the other? Like a living card game versus a TCG. Let's go ahead and like steel man both of these and say like, what is the best reasons why something should be a TCG and the best reasons why something should be a living card game? The TCG model has sort of these incredible advantages that are also easy to make predatory.
There's definitely things that make some of these easier and harder to make money with.
Yes. Yeah. Theoretically, living card games are a better deal for the consumer, ideally. That has not always been the case with some of these models, but we'll get into that. And the TCG feels more predatory, just sort of out of the gate, right? Is that distributing your game pieces randomly is, kind of problematic, right?
It may or may not be gambling.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So first I just wanted to start with the steel manning, right? So TCGs, for me, this is sort of the list of things that I think are pros. The first one is that booster packs allow you to have an additional format to the game, which is drafting. Booster packs are a great reward for tournament play. It's really easy to have a very small incremental reward. The booster pack, and I've talked about this before on the channel, but it provides a system of entropy to the game itself, a way for players to be forced to play suboptimally. Theoretically, you have a difficult time getting a hold of game pieces. You can extend the life of any given set because it takes players a while to collect them.
Yeah.
And then on the product side of things, the secondary market, I think, is a pro and a con. but it's something that we have to keep in mind with when something you purchase is worth money. That makes you more like, oh, I bought this, right? And if you open it in a booster pack, you're like, oh my God, I'm a genius. I opened this card in a booster pack.
Yeah. I'm rich.
Right. I did it, right? That's the weirdness of randomness, right? It's like when it goes against our favor, it's like, oh, it's the fucking RNGesus messed me up again. Yeah. Great. And when you succeed, you're like, I did it, right? That's the There's a desire for acquisition and ownership, right? There's really a sense of identity that you get from opening something in a booster pack, like I'm saying. It's not just, I did it, I found this thing. It's, I did it, and now this is a piece of me and my identity because I found it, right? I discovered it. I feel like I'm really pumping up TCGs, but we'll...
No. I think this is great. That's why I think Yu-Gi-Oh was such a powerful thing, was everyone had their card. Like I'm the blue eyes guy. I'm the only guy in the world with a blue eyes. And so it like leans into that feeling of like, I pulled this. And so now it's like the only one in my locals or whatever. And it does add a sense of heroicness to the experience.
The final thing I have is just that in the pro side of TCGs, it's great for the product to be able to sell the same thing multiple times without people being like, I bought the same thing again.
Yeah, to sell someone 50 of the same common is a feat of business.
For better or worse, you're loading a player up with cards that they may already own, and they can give those to other people, which is great for building the game. But also it makes it so it takes them longer to acquire the whole set of chase cards.
Another big benefit of TCGs is ease of entry. I think it's really easy to have like starter decks and not confuse someone. Like if I have a core set of a game, like Netrunner, let's say, it's really difficult to sell you anything smaller than that is like separate, unless it's like, if it contains cards that also exist in the core set. Because now it's like the LCG players tend to be more like, well, I'm not going to buy the same thing twice. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't want confusion of product. And I think that's changed a lot now, but at the time it was harder. And I think that being able to sell like a starter deck and then just here's a box of random stuff now. That's step two. It makes it easy because if you have your friend who's interested in playing, they don't have to buy all the living card game product up to that point.
The ease of entry is much greater, I think, in a TCG, where you don't feel like you have this backlog that you need to address right away, right? It's like, this is the new thing that's come out. I can just start there. There's not like hey, start with the core set and then you build up from there kind of situation that I think a lot of these LCGs fall into. I don't know if they have to, but I think a lot of them end up in that category.
For clarity on all of these things, I think this is the pros of TCGs as they've been done up to this point. These are patterns we've seen from stuff in the past. There's ways TCGs can improve, and there's ways that LCGs can improve, I'd say. Pros of living card games are expandable, kind of, I did the wrong quotes.
Wrong way. We don't want to get sued.
Oh no, I can feel it. Obviously, the biggest one is that you get everything. Like, it's very affordable. It's way cheaper. Like, you can buy all of a living card game for a few $100s, usually, maybe an old one for like $1,000, but you can buy like one set of Magic and not even a full play set of Magic and a bunch of extra garbage for like $1,000, multiple thousands sometimes. So I think price is absolutely the biggest pro. LCGs create a really interesting deck building environment. Like, I think they're really great for people who love building decks, not people who love like building the meta deck, but people who love building decks. Because if you're playing Magic, you have to go buy a bunch of random cards and then also supplement with singles, right? If you're playing an LCG or an expandable game, you basically can get all the cards for the same price for cheaper, and then you can build a bunch of decks. So as a deck tinkerer, I think that LCGs and expandable games tend to be better because it's easier to get the whole thing.
Kind of like out of the box, you're getting an experience that would be made for multiple people, where in a TCG, if you're just buying a pre-con, you might just be like that. Even if that's the gateway, it might not even be the way that you're getting to the game. But if you get a pre-con, it's like you got to buy two. With it coming in a box as more like a board game, I think it gives designers opportunities for maybe better narrative experiences and also potentially better co-op experiences. I think TCGs have a weird relationship with co-op. One of my favorite card games to talk about is the Dead World of Warcraft trading card game that had like raids. In some ways, that almost ended up more like a living card game, because in order for you to do those co-op experiences, you had to like buy precons of the heroes to play, and then you also had to buy kind of the precon of the raid deck. And at a certain point, this is almost just a living card game, right? Because you have to, like, how are you supposed to, in a TCG, build out this force that you're co-oping against without it coming all in one box set, right? I think like it has to almost be the precon model.
LCGs or expandable card games have a much more like clear like design intent, I think, because you know that every one of those cards is going to get played. Like there's not going to be a bunch of stuff that is too rare or like only some people are going to see. So you can sort of, you design everything with the intent of being played, which I think is a big benefit for players, is that every single card in an LCG or an expandable card game is essentially like a rare.
The intentionality in design from a designer's perspective is such a boon that you can know what game pieces your players are going to have access to.
Yes.
And I think in a TCG environment that's difficult, right? You don't know. You're like, okay, well, a player could have bought, one booster of this set and that's it. Or they could have collected a playset of every card in the set.
Yeah, so more things on the business side of things for the expandable and LCGs is that they're easier to design logistically in a lot of ways, because you don't have to deal with foils, you don't have to deal with boosters, you don't have to deal with collation, you don't have to deal with, like, you basically are just like, here's all the stuff that goes in the box, and here's print these sheets, cut them, and put them in this box. And so it's very easy to make.
If you're an indie developer, in order to get into a TCG, like making a TCG and get a TCG distributed, that's a much larger hurdle, I think, in terms of cost to print and also the player base acquisition that you need to have a TCG actually going, right?
I actually do think that's a big one, is that I think that expandable games have like a lower floor to do well. Like I think you can kind of make a bunch of it's just like a board game. You can make 1,000 copies, sell it. Your idea of success can be much more variable. TCGs, there's sort of this mountain to sort of constantly climb every release. There's definitely like a big pro on just like the ease of being able to make an expandable game, and just like keep it stocked and get it out in front of people. And you only really need to sell 1 or 2 copies of something to any given person. So you just have a lot more idea of your audience. Like one of the biggest things looking at like crowdfunding, for example, for us, like Hubworld Aidalon, I can pretty much guarantee that every single one of our backers is going to play the game. But if I made a TCG, I have no idea what the percentage of those backers are who are actually going to be playing the game versus who are just speculating. And so you could make $28 million and like only 10% of those backers.
Who did that? Who might you be describing right now? That's an interesting little tidbit there.
I think even Sorcery's first Kickstarter made like 2 million, and it really kind of struggled initially. And I love that game to death, but they've stuck to their guns and continued to kind of build that audience. But I think a larger portion of that initial Kickstarter was looking for the next Black Lotus, than was looking to play this new game. And so I think that's something that's a big benefit, is you just have a lot more close relationship with your audience and a lot more close like visibility on like who and how many people are buying and playing your game with an expandable product.
No, that makes sense. It kind of gets into some cons with TCGs, honestly. So, Okay, so let's talk a little bit about like the cons of TCGs then, right? And the biggest one is that they are pay to win. The more money that you invest in a TCG, the more likely you are to win a game. And this does even out when you get to higher levels of the form of the game, right? Where if you're playing at its most competitive, players are basically evened out with the amount of money that they have spent on their decks, because that's a requirement in order to play in these competitive spaces. Another con, I think, for TCGs is that we kind of touched on this already a little bit, but there's a requirement of a community to ensure that the game can actually function as it's intended. Yeah. And so that's a big hurdle to climb, especially for independent creators, to get over that hurdle.
I think to me, like, there's no way to like really own a whole collection, which is kind of the point. It's a pro from a business standpoint. It's a con from a player perspective, that if you want to be someone who loves deck building, you just have to buy so much stuff, and you have to buy singles, you have to trade, and it creates this like very specific cycle of player type. I think that's a big con personally, which it's like you have to have a divided community in a way that is large enough to just keep this cycle of like buying a bunch of stuff and playing the game and talking about it.
I brew a lot of decks for like, Magic and things. And I do it all in like digital tools, right? It's like, and if those tools didn't exist, then it would be pretty difficult. You're right, to be able to, deck build in a meaningful way. And so that makes me think like, okay, yeah, if you're that, I think that's probably a requirement now to get for like an indie TCG. Like you're going to have some kind of deck builder for people to be able to do this customization, which is probably a digital tool, which is a whole nother added expense. And now we're back to the fact that TCGs cost a lot more to make.
Yeah. I think you can see in Sorcery that like they have to keep reprinting stuff that I don't think they planned on reprinting as much, like beta and different sets, because they have to kind of keep like a certain amount of product going out into the card pool for people to buy, because not everyone is selling. Like the secondary market isn't as hot, and some people are coming in and buying cards, which is raising prices. And so they have to like keep printing stuff I don't think they planned on printing as much of, to sort of like keep the market like that's hungry for cards, but also to keep new players who are coming in who want to build decks. They can't afford cards unless you make more cards. And so you have to sort of, it creates this treadmill that you're like instantly on, and they're doing I think a fine job with it, but it's something that I think is very hard to do as a small creator. And if you're a bigger creator and you're making, Star Wars TCGs or any kind of big IP, you effectively you have an even higher mountain to climb, because now you have licensing costs. And so you just like, you need to prove the success of this thing in perpetuity at like this massive incline, and it's why you see so many of these games crash and burn.
So let's discuss the cons of living card games.
Yeah.
And these are interesting because I think in some ways there's not really there's not a whole lot of big living card games around anymore, right? Or at least they're still maybe around, but they're not. None of them are sort of like eating the lunch of TCGs, right? Right now we're living in a space where TCGs are massive. They're in a huge bubble right now. And so I think it's interesting to be able to look at LCGs or expandable card games from this perspective of what has worked and what hasn't, and maybe how do we adjust things going forward to maybe address some of the drawbacks, I think.
Yeah.
So what have you, I guess, experienced thus far in terms of working on Aidalon, and also things that you saw from Fantasy Flight of like the big problems that arise with living card games?
Honestly, a lot of the cons of how living card games at Fantasy Flight and some other expandable card games experience are from that list of TCG pros, to be honest. Basically, the buy-in is a little higher. You usually need like a core set in the sense of an LCG. And oftentimes it's not a full play set in a lot of the ones that FFG did back in the day. You'd have to buy like, if you wanted the full play set of Netrunner, I think you needed 4 of them at one point. Because there was like one-ofs of a couple cards or something.
In order for you to get enough copies of cards to play for, I think, a Warhammer 40K Conquest, you had to buy 3 core sets, 3 copies of the core set of the game.
Yeah, it was very common at FFG, the core set concept. Like even X-Wing, which is a minis game, you had to buy like multiple core sets if you wanted like enough TIE fighter. It was like the most affordable way to get all these specific things, these very basic ships.
In some ways, I think it makes players feel like they are rebuying the same product in a way that TCGs make you do it, right? But in a smaller dose, I think, in a TCG space, right?
Yeah, it's still cheaper. It's still better.
Yeah, I think it's still,
respectful.
That's what's so weird, right? Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of a pro, but it's not a pro.
It is technically cheaper to buy 3 core sets, but you feel so much worse about doing it for some reason.
There's something about it, for sure. And I think that's a big part related to that, is that the buy-in on an LCG, because Fantasy Flight never did rotation on LCGs. And so the format just got bigger, and
that's tough. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's its own challenge. But even sans that, if you have casual players, whatever, you get to the point where the meta is so spanning of like products that if someone's like, hey, I want to get into Netrunner, you're like, well, it's going to cost you $550 because you have to buy 3 of these and 1 of these, and you should buy this cycle. Don't buy this cycle. And it's like, not only is it expensive, it's like overwhelming. You're like getting this weird checklist of items that you may or may not want. And that exists in TCG from like a meta standpoint, but I don't know. It's more. There's like more of it.
Without the secondary market, it's tough, right? Because when you have the secondary market and you want to build a deck, you can just make a list of the singles that you're going to buy for that deck.
Yeah.
And in a living card game, if there's no secondary market, sometimes there is. Most of the time there isn't. You make a list of products that you have to buy instead of individual cards. It would be ideal for a customer perspective for you to just make a deck, right? You're like, okay, this is the meta deck. I'm just going to put it in a box and sell it to the customers. But then suddenly it's like your customer only buys a pre-con and then they're good to go and that's it.
And that kind of speaks to another con, which is the whole entropy idea. The tail of the product is shorter because they have all the cards, and especially if you were to sell something like that would have like no entropy, right? Like
it's done. Yeah,
you've sold the meta, and I think that was like, there's games that have definitely had challenges with that. Like I think Keyforge, even though it's not an LCG, weirdly had that problem because you could just buy and if you had a good deck, you had a good deck, and that was that. It is made up a little bit, I will say, by the complexity of the cards. I think. Not complexity is not the right word, but the fact that there are no commons in an LCG, right? There's no like 2/2 first strike, I mean, some of them kind of have some kind of like vanilla card, but for the most part, cards tend to have functional use. Like they're all designed and intended to be played. There's not cards that are intended to fill packs. But that is one of the big cons of LCGs, I'd say, especially the way that FFG had it, is that there's a lot of entropy and then there's a big buy-in. And so you kind of have like fall off, but you're not getting onboarding. And that becomes a bit of a challenge.
I do think that there's also a concern as far as speculation goes, right? It's that when you're like a TCG space, obviously there's singles that are worth a lot of money, but in a living card game space, if supply is too short on a product, it's the product itself that it just almost gets shifted to the product and away from an individual card. And so it still can be subject to some of those similar secondary market problems if you have sort of catastrophic success, I guess, which is great for the business, but for players, it starts to become like, well, I still can't get my game pieces, even though the promise is that I can get my game pieces. So
for sure. I mean, I guess in some ways, depending on how you're dealing with formats and stuff, but again, they didn't have formats, but that could even be a pro. It's that there's Netrunner product that's still worth money. Like my Netrunner collection is still worth money, which is awesome. I mean, it's also a dead game, but it's not a dead game because Null Signal's still making stuff, but it is worth money. And I think that, so there is like a world where you could have like rotation on like a living card game and there's stuff that still has value, but I agree. You have to buy a bigger box of stuff, effectively, that could, if it's short printed, could be a problem.
Place where you kind of get stuck is that TCGs don't make the promise that you're going to get all of the game pieces.
No,
where an expandable card game does, right? They say, yeah, you can get all the game pieces and it's super easy to do that. And then players come in and they're like, well, you told me one thing and now I'm finding out that this is the actual reality.
Especially with that multiple purchase thing, because you're like, oh, you need 3 of these actually. And it's like, that's kind of weird once you do that.
And then I guess the final con I have here, which is actually just kind of funny because I'm kind of sort of poking fun at TCGs, but it says there's no reason for customers to buy the same product multiple times. Come on. Why don't you want to buy the same thing a million times? Come on, guys.
Yeah, you have to find a way to do that, which, but that's hard. It's hard to do. I think Another con, which is draft, like limited formats. It's not something that is very easy to do unless you do it on purpose. And up to this point, FFG never really did. They did they did draft packs for some games, but it was just, I don't know. It never was quite the same.
It's kind of interesting though, right? Because I would say a cube in Magic is effectively like could be sold as an expandable card game, right? It's like you get just the whole cube and you're ready to go, and that can be played in a draft environment. So I don't think there's any reason why. Yeah, I don't know if there's any reason why they wouldn't be able to do a limited format. Yeah. Corey, what do you think? Is that real? Is that true?
That's something you could do if you really wanted to. I agree. I totally agree. I actually think most of these cons on LCG and most of those pros on TCG, which are the same, really.
It's two sides of the same coin.
Are solvable. Sure. Yeah. I think that the more moral game that's more affordable. There are ways from a business standpoint and a player standpoint to have a game that provides those, I do believe.
Why don't you tell us about some of those, Corey? Let us know. How is it going?
It's going good. I think that there's a lot of things that you can do to fix some of the cons of LCGs. We at Earthborn Games, making Hubworld Aidalon, we've been trying to do this because we love the LCG expandable card game model. It's something that we all made because we're all FFG alum, but also that we feel is right if it's our values as a company.
It does feel like we're kind of maybe entering the beginning of a expandable card game renaissance, I think. We're starting to see these independent creators showing up with these games, like you're saying, like you guys with Hubworld Aidalon, Gudnak. I think there's more. Who else is that? There's like a few. Warlord. There's a few more that are at Covenant, I think, that are doing the expandable card game thing.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more for sure.
So how have you addressed some of the biggest cons here, right? Like in terms of that, I think for me, especially game design wise, that system of entropy, right? That ability for you to elongate the lifespan of a product through the system. What have you guys thought about in terms of making that a reality for an expandable card game?
I mean, one of the first things we did, and this is somewhat related to entropy, I'd say, but it also is just kind of a big change, is that every set box of Aidalon, so we plan to have a set of Aidalon every 6 months, and every set is one, like it's basically for $100, which is essentially like a display. If you buy a display of Magic, you open it, and it's a full play set of that set. You get multiple copies of every card, everything. And that was the idea kind of going in, was that you just buy one of these every 6 months and you have all the cards, which sounds bad for entropy in a way, but it's not. I think 1 6 month release is better than
releasing every 6 months. I think you're gonna have like that. That's a pretty steady stream of stuff releasing. So in a way, your release schedule, I think, is one way that you can combat the fact that players can solve the game relatively quickly because they can have access to all the game pieces. So if there's more game pieces coming out regularly, this is actually something I was thinking about for my game, is that what's the sort of minimum viable product that can come out in regular intervals so that you can keep injecting new game pieces into the system.
Yeah, totally. Another thing is that we plan on having multiple formats, but one of those is like a standard format, which is something that FFG never did with LCGs. So, and that actually is a big benefit because every one of those boxes is effectively a set. And so just like Magic sets, it's almost like a core set in a way, but it's really like every set is something you can start with. And so you don't have to be like, oh, I need to buy set 1 all the way up until the current set. You can just buy the one that's on the shelf in front of you and get a ton of play out of it. And then if you want to backtrack, great. But our plan is to have a standard format that is like, it's 2 years of product. So it's 4 sets at a time. And that caps that like buy-in problem. Like you don't have to go and buy everything all the way up until this point. But secondly, it also keeps the meta interesting because all of a sudden there's cards that aren't available anymore. There's cards that might get like reprinted with like changes. There's all kinds of things that might happen. Completely new archetypes. It gives us a lot more design flexibility, which is something that like the traditional LCG that with no standard format had problems because you're just designing into a tighter and tighter box.
A big con for rotating formats often is that players are like, well, now my cards are worthless, or like I bought all these cards, invested all this money, and now they've rotated out. But when you're an expandable / living card game environment, you didn't necessarily invest as much money into those decks, right? And if you wanted to switch meta decks, it's much easier. There's less resistance to switching over to a different strategy, which ideally, if the meta is designed in a way that turns itself over, switching decks, it would help elongate the time that before a format becomes solved. If it becomes solved at all, ideally, it would continue to rotate over and people would change what they're playing based on what people are playing that week.
But we also, every single one of these set boxes is a draftable cube. We have a draft format. And so basically every single box is a 4-player cube. And you can even add 2 together and make an 8-pod. You can do whatever you want. And the game has multiplayer. It has 4-player. Like we've basically created as many ways to interface with this product as possible. Multiplayer formats. You can do a 2v2 if you want. You can do draft. You can do constructed. You can do standard. You can do every set you've ever owned. And then also we've even kind of talked about doing like monthly like updates that are like, this month, what if like there's like a third format that's sort of says, some old set is like legal this week. Draft is the big one, I think, that adds a big tail because there's just so much you can do. And our draft format especially does allow cards that don't normally get played together to get played together.
It moves the system of entropy to a different location, right? It's like, it's no longer the acquisition of product. Now it's all right, well, now I have the product, but in the format in which I'm playing, there's a built-in system here that makes it so I don't necessarily get the best cards that I would want for my deck. And so something like Cube, I think, just makes so much sense for an expandable card game model. Or one of the pros with TCGs, right, is that secondary market. Mm-hmm. Like individual cards end up being worth more money, and players, we talked about this before, like I opened this card, it's now part of my identity, and this feels like something that expandable card games don't really do very well. So have you thought about ways to bring that into your expandable card game?
The biggest one is something like cosmetic upgrades, which is to me, it's like it is, and most people who come from like LCGs and expandable games, I think it's a big no-no to like have like gambling like or other products that are gameplay, but if it's like existing cards and they're foil or they're alt arts or they're whatever, I do think that is absolutely something worth looking into. And this has been done so far by Goodknock did this, where they actually have boosters that are essentially just alt arts and foils of existing cards, and you can just buy a box of boosters. Like it's literally just, it's like if you didn't see the other product, you'd almost assume this was a TCG.
It almost puts you in a hybrid model, right? Rather than being so firmly in one camp or the other, it's almost like you're a TCG, but you have an ability for someone to just buy all the game pieces that they would want. And if they want to engage at the collectible side, theoretically, you get the best of both worlds here. Ideally, long term, we'll see if it ends up, bringing in some of the cons. But I think that, with Goodknock attempting this, I think it's really exciting to see where it goes for them. As from early signs, and it seems to have been quite successful. So, but yeah, I think maybe even in terms of marketing, you end up marketing yourself more as like, well, we're a TCG, but you can just buy all the cards if you want the core playset thing, right? Yeah,
you can almost choose who you're talking to, depending on, like for us, since our game has a lot of like netrunner relations, in its mechanics, and it's got more tokens, and it's a lot more of this.
But if you're talking to a TCG audience, you could switch it around.
Might appeal to like a Hearthstone player, right? So it's like, or whatever. So I think for them, they almost could change their marketing and be like, we're a TCG, but this. But for us, it's like we might want to capture our LCG board game audience, which is a lot easier for us, and then try and get people who maybe are hoping to crack packs. There's something for them to buy at the counter, But I think that's actually another way to solve cons with LCGs is just how you talk about your game and the expectations you as a designer, developer, publisher have going into the game and how you broadcast it. So like, for example, for us, for Aidalon, one thing we talk about a lot is we aren't trying to dethrone Magic. We're not trying to be better than Fab. We're not trying to even, we would love to do as well or whatever. We link arms with sorcery and ride together, whatever. We love sorcery. I think that's a big way to think about solving some of these cons of from a business standpoint for if you're making your own expandable game, is just, how do you speak to your audience and how do you kind of get them to try your game and hope that they'll love it so much it will be their A game, but also be happy that people are just playing your game, even if it's just between rounds of whatever they're playing normally.
There's plenty of space there for people to be playing multiple games. And in order for your project to succeed, you don't need to be making Magic money for it to work out.
No, unless you have a license.
Unless you're licensing Star Wars, whatever, don't do it.
It's dangerous.
Universes beyond Star Wars is coming soon, so just that'll wrap up my conversation with Cory DeVore about TCGs versus expandable card games. Thanks again, Cory, for coming on the channel. I appreciate your expertise. If you have any questions, you can leave those down in the comments below. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description. Also, make sure you go and check out Cory's game, Hubworld Aidalon. They're still in late pledges, so you have a chance to get in on those crowdfunding exclusives. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.